several years later, I get this email from this guy. And he said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. We had dinner out in Arizona that time. We did that show. You featured for me. I remembered you were really funny. And I started booking. It's a different guy now. But at the time, he's like, I started booking this thing called DryBar. And I want you to do it.
Wow.
And so he, submitted me to that. And I got in and I did it all because of that stupid festival that I did, where everyone told me not to do it, and everyone sort of phoned it in, and I was the only one who took it seriously and got a lot out of it.
Now, broadcasting live from the Podcast Palace on Park Street in beautiful and dangerous Clearwater, Florida, it's the Comedians Uncorked podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Tony God and Pat Largo.
And welcome to Season 3 of Comedians Uncorked podcast. My name is Pat Largo. My co-host, Tony God, is not with us today. He's busy editing stuff. He's a very talented gentleman. He'll be back next time. Of course, thank you guys for checking us out on Spotify, YouTube, and comediansuncorked.com. And thanks to our in-studio sponsor, as always, she's been with us since day one, Julie Drolshagen of Century 21 in Clearwater, Florida. How you get to with her? I'm glad you asked. 727-902-9233. FloridaBeachBusiness.com is her address. And even though things are slowing down around the country, real estate is still hot, especially in the Tampa Bay area. This gentleman right here, I had the pleasure of working with briefly, and it's really cool. He's a very busy man, so I'm very happy that he got a chance to take a few minutes to spend some time with us. He's from California, originally from Fresno. I believe he's the youngest finalist ever in the funniest comic in Los Angeles. It's Mr. Daniel Eachus. How are you, man?
What's up? Thanks for having me. Yeah.
This is great. I know you're busy. You got shows going on tonight and just every day of your life, and you got a lot going on. First off, I know it's the first time I met you because I almost walked by you at the club we were at because you look like you're 17 years old. Can I just ask how old you are?
Yeah, are you a cop?
No, not anymore.
Okay. No. I am actually 30. God, I had to think about this. 31.
31. Wow.
Yeah.
Let me talk to the audience for a second. Folks, do you remember when you were 31? I know, neither do I. That was for me. Wow, I just had a moment. God dang, man. Well, no, 31, and you're doing so much, man. We talked briefly when we were working together here in Florida a few weeks ago, and it was a pleasure opening for you at Porky's Comedy Club in St. Cloud. But we were having, talking about the audience and different stuff like that, and it was fun working with you that Friday and Saturday. But then I went on and got some more information from you on your website, and I know about your comedy. I know about your DryBar special. We'll talk about that later. But author, you got so much going on. But let's back up to a second. You were born in Fresno, right? And then are you in Long Beach now?
Yeah. It's Long Beach. Just it's all a part of LA or whatever. Sure. But yeah, I'm in Long Beach.
And how are things right now going on? Like, dare I say, post-pandemic? I mean, how is the scene out there compared to what it was before we had COVID going on?
I mean, honestly, out of all the places I've been to, I feel like LA took the longest to get back to normal. And I don't even know. Yeah. I mean, who knows what normal is anymore? But I still feel like it's not there 100%. It's at 92% right now. A lot of shows disappeared. Slowly, new ones came in to replace it, and so that's why it's almost back to normal. But yeah. It was weird. It was weird for a long. It's still weird, but it was really weird for a long time.
So now, at 31, how long have you actually been professionally in the comedy game?
Mentally, 47 years. Physically, I started. So let's see. It was 2009. So it's been 13 years.
13 years. So you're in this thing now. What I know, I read you were around farm. Did you grow up on a farm in Fresno?
No, just kind of. I know a lot of people who did, and kind of my high school was sort of like a lot of those farm kids or whatever. But I was surrounded by it. Never in one though.
Okay. Now, were you like a theater guy in school? Like what made you go, man, I want to be on a stage. I don't know if it's going to be acting or telling jokes, but I got to be doing something different.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a theater guy. It's funny with theater, I did a play my senior year, but there was a structure to how things ran in high school.
Uh-huh.
You know, you take all the theater classes, and then when you're a junior, you have a shot at getting like a bigger part in a play. When you're a senior, you have a shot at like the lead or whatever. I never took a theater class, but I had a good friend who did and really liked the theater, and he moved away his junior year, and we were all kind of bummed that like, oh, I guess we're not going to go get to see our friend in the play anymore. And I had another friend who was like, you should audition. And I was like, I've never taken a theater class. She's like, you should still try it. And like an idiot, I auditioned for the lead of the play my senior year, and I ended up getting it. So all the theater kids hated me. Like they really hated me because they're like, I've been studying my whole career for this.
You see? That doesn't mean anything, does it?
Right, exactly.
See that?
I don't blame them for being mad at me, but
Sure.
yeah. But in terms of comedy, there's a long story and a short story, a really long story and a short story. The short story is essentially that somebody basically just, one day I was like driving home with a friend from school in high school, and I was like ranting about traffic signs or something, and she was laughing, and she was like, who says that? What comedian says that? Right. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just making that up right now. And she's like, you didn't steal that from a comedian? I was like, no, I just made it up. And she's like, oh my God, you should do stand-up comedy. And then I basically just tried. I was like, oh, okay. And then just tried it. I went to into my friend's backyard because at the time in Fresno, there were no shows, nothing at all. I didn't know, I'd never been to a live comedy show. I only knew Comedy Central and like these big, HBO specials and stuff like that. So in my head, this idea of a 5-minute spot, it just didn't even make sense to me. So in my head, every comedian does an hour, right? Or about 45 with commercials. So my first time doing stand-up, I did 45 minutes because I thought that's just what you do. That's just, you know what I mean? So I wrote 45, and honestly, like, it made it a lot easier for when I moved to LA and I started doing comedy regular, because they were like, hey, it's a 5-minute spot or a 3-minute spot. And
right.
Like, well, out of 45 minutes, which, granted wasn't amazing material by any means, I had a decent 3 once I took away all the stuff, once I picked my best jokes from that 45. So it made it easier to kind of start out at that point, because I had a lot to mine from.
But dude, just to be 18 or so and write 45 minutes.
Yeah, technically that was back in 2000. I was actually 17 when I did that show, and I thought my career was over. I was like, just doing it for fun. And
yeah,
and it's funny looking back, because I made a couple of my friends open for me. One of my friends, I was like, yeah, you just do like 20. And he's like, this is really hard. And I'm like, you're just doing 20. I'm doing 45. None of us had ever done comedy in our life.
Yeah, giving the wrong advice. You've never done this. Do 30. Yeah. How hard can it be? See, this is why people hate you. You didn't study acting. You become a lead. You're writing 45 minutes at 17 years old. You're a prodigy.
Well, I mean, we all studied it. You know what I mean? Even if we weren't reading books on how to do stand-up comedy. We did it somehow, like everyone, the classic story is being the funny sibling, having older siblings and having to win them over with it's all like a form of studying, even if we weren't aware that that's what we were doing.
Were you a class clown type?
I was actually the quiet kid, to be honest.
Me too.
But I always did have a strong sense of humor. And for me, it wasn't even like growing up with stand-up as much. For me, it was a lot of like comedy movies and National Lampoons and like the Looney Tunes even, and Pee Wee Herman and stuff like that I kind of attribute to more than stand-up.
That's fun. Yeah, because I was gonna say back then, what'd you say, 2000, like 13 years ago? So like I'm trying to think. I mean, obviously there's great comics, but I know you just said you were into the cartoons and the movies, but there's a certain, comedian or two that kind of stood out back then, even before
that
you were
was
writing, that you're like, I kind of like this stuff?
Yeah, it was right at right when Jim Gaffigan broke to like us, to the mainstream audience.
Yep.
That was like, oh wow, this guy's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. It's just, it's still strong, still just doing the thing, man, just plowing through everything. Now, youngest finalist ever and the funniest comic in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
How old were you here? And did you go in? Did someone else say, hey, you should do this? Or did someone sign you up like they do their friends on American Idol? How did this happen?
I don't know how I heard about it, but I heard about it somewhere, and I did sign myself up. And I remember they referred to me as 2 years and under. Like they had a group of comedians who had been doing comedy for 2 years and under. And because there was like a show of that, and then the winner of that moved on to the rest of the competition or something like that. So I'm not sure the exact year. It must have been like 2010. I was probably 1 year in or something. So I would have been either, depending on what month it was, either 18 or 19 years old at that point. Yeah.
And now did you win that category or the whole entire? How'd that work? The whole entire?
I was a finalist. I don't know. There was like a top 10, and they just gave away to one winner, and I didn't win. So who knows? I like to think I came in second.
Yeah, no, it's still, I mean, come on. That's just, it's almost like stuff. It seems to like things kind of, I don't want to say come easy to you, but it seems like you just kind of found a niche. You know what you're doing, and you're like, yeah, I'm just doing it. I'm just young. I just write and I win, and that's what I do. It's kind of cool.
I mean, I don't know. Yes and no. I was in high school. I actually played jazz guitar, and that's sort of kind of a long story. We were sort of this bench warmer crew of ragtag jazz kids who didn't know what they were doing and didn't know anything about jazz, and ended up winning a bunch of awards and being really good at that. And so that's what taught me how to perform live. But more importantly than that, because I won a couple of them, but one specifically sort of big award for me was winning it was like best soloist of a whole festival. So it was out of like 1,000 musicians. And it taught me that writing something in my bedroom, which is where I wrote that solo out, could translate to being performed in front of a bunch of people, and that people would like it. And I know, like, to some maybe who don't do comedy, like hearing that, it's like, well, how do you get comedy out of jazz? It's like there's a lot of similarities, and I think that taught me a lot of the important lessons that comics take their first few years to learn right out of the gate. Because I had been doing that kind of stuff, performing, editing, writing, being able to also improvise at the same time. A lot of the skills that comics have to learn, I think jazz sort of taught me very early on. And funny enough, I ended up reading a book years later about Billy Crystal, and he said almost the exact same thing. His dad owned like a record store that specialized in jazz music, and he always felt like his appreciation for jazz music is what taught him how to do comedy. And I was like, I've said the same thing for years. Billy Crystal stole my idea.
As I'm saying, he's always been a thief, Billy Crystal. Real quick, what was the name of the jazz band?
We were in high school, so we were referred to as the East Side Jazz Band, because I went to Central East High School. So
I'm gonna pull up YouTube videos.
Maybe, I don't know if actually that's fun. It's funny. Yeah, I don't know if we're on YouTube.
If you're shredding guitar solos, I want to see it.
Yeah, I do have audio. We made a CD. We actually got to play at Disneyland in the New Orleans Square area. We made a CD. I have the physical CD. I don't know where it is other than that, but
damn, that's awesome. Yeah. I never knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then now let's go on here now. All of a sudden, you're doing your thing, and you go into this DryBar special. We talk about this on our podcast. Can you let people know what DryBar is, the DryBar special? Because a lot of great comics have them, so you're in that category. And how did you lead up to getting over to out of state to get to do your DryBar special?
Yeah, DryBar is sort of the new form of doing stand-up specials. Not that we've moved away from, Netflix, obviously, or HBO or anything like that, but this whole idea of doing a special that's not necessarily in one place is kind of a new idea that's kind of taking over comedy, that, that this special isn't necessarily released on, just drybar.com or whatever. It's drybarcomedy.com, whatever. It's
Right.
on Peacock, it's on YouTube, it's on DryBar's streaming platform and all that. So I got in kind of on the somewhat earlier end of them doing specials, and I tell a lot of comics this story of how I basically said yes to doing a festival pretty early on. I won't say the name of it, but it was a festival pretty early on that I knew the people who put on the festival booked some shows that I wanted to get into.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were like, don't pay money to do a festival, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's not worth it, whatever. I was like, well, I still want to do it. So got into this festival, and yeah, for non-comics out there, yeah, it's like a lot of these festivals, we have to pay an entry fee in order to get in. It's not like we're getting money. Most of the time we're paying money to stay at a hotel or whatever. So I did that. I get put on a show that's Sunday at 5 p.m. on the side of a casino. It just was the worst possible spot. And I had another friend on that show who was just like, this sucks. I hate this. Why are we doing this? Just every comic there was complaining, but I was like, you know what? I came here for a reason, and I'm going to do my best set. And with 3 people in the audience, I did the best that I could. I tried to win them over, talked to them personally, did my best jokes, all that stuff. Well, after my show, this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, I'm actually the guy who runs this whole thing, and you were the best one. That was great. Can you do a show tomorrow out in Arizona? And I was like, oh my God, yes, this is why I came here, this guy. So I said yes to that, and I didn't have a car with me, so I was out in another state and did not have a car, and somehow had to get to Arizona tomorrow. And I had driven with some other comedians who had to go back to California. They were like, well, we can't take you. So I called a buddy of mine, told him I'll give you all the money they told me I would make if you just pick me up and drive me to Arizona. And
Wow.
That's what he did. I go out there, and I featured for this headliner who I just met. Very nice guy. We had dinner that night. After the show, we talked a lot. He was telling me I did really well, and he thought I was really funny, and that I was super young, and giving me a bunch of advice and all that. Anyways, long story short, several years later, I get this email from this guy, and he said, hey, I don't know if you remember me. We had dinner out in Arizona that time. We did that show. You featured for me. I remembered you were really funny. And I started booking, it's a different guy now, but at the time he's like, I started booking this thing called DryBar. And I want you to do it.
Wow.
And so he, submitted me to that. And I got in, and I did it all because of that stupid festival that I did, where everyone told me not to do it, and everyone sort of phoned it in, and I was the only one who took it seriously and got a lot out of it.
And Daniel, that is the lesson, because, a couple of episodes ago, we had a gentleman on from a comedy club in Indiana. He's a GM, been in the game for almost 30 years. And we did a few minutes on that. Tony and myself, we were talking to this man, Dennis Tooley, great guy. And he was giving us the business side. And just what you said, he goes, if you're doing a festival to win it, he goes, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Like, if you win, cool. But he goes, you're going out there. And like you said, we're normally paying to go do this whole thing and pay for food, lodging, the whole 9 yards. And he said, you go out there to make relationships, right? You go out there to meet people, just what you did. And everyone else, right? We all would have done it, right? 3 people. Oh God, man, we got to suck it up and do it. But you did it. You pretend it was 300 people, right? And the dude comes up to you afterwards. See, this is the moral that I want, not just people in comedy or people starting up in comedy, people in general in life. I know it sucks, but if you just do it to the best of your ability, because you never know who's watching, right? Or who knows who. So that's an awesome story, man. So that's really cool. So you did that DryBar. Now, is it called A Mild and Skinny Guy?
Yeah.
I
Which
like
was I had just recorded my first album before that, and I thought about naming the album that, and I changed the album name at the last second and ended up naming a track on the album A Mild and Skinny Guy. But I really like that name a lot because I was a big Steve Martin fan, and it was sort of an homage to that. And when I got asked to do the DryBar, I was like, I know exactly what I'm naming it. The thing I didn't name the album.
That's awesome. And if people don't know, DryBar really is it's clean comedy, correct?
Yeah.
So
Very, very clean.
yeah.
Yeah. There's some. I know at one point even they made a big deal to all of us that we couldn't even say "Oh my God," which was sort of like very specific, but okay. And then I think I probably had the same reaction as a lot of comics who are like, okay, weird, but that should be very easy. Okay, I won't say "Oh my God" during my set, and then you do a set to rehearse for it, and you're like, oh wow, I say "Oh my God" way more than I thought I did.
I was just going to say, it sounds easy, right? Like if they come to you and say, obviously, you're not going to say any curse words. We don't want you to say hell. We don't want you to say damn. All right. That would take me a lot of like thinking to not just say hell or damn. Okay. But think about that. Oh my God. It sounds easy, but like in everyday life, every day, how many times do we say, oh my God, in an hour?
Yeah.
Like that's like asking someone to stop cigarettes right now for an hour and do a show and we'll pay you. You can't do it.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until they told me not to that "Oh my God" is usually what a lot of us say instead of cursing, right?
Yeah.
Instead of what the hell or whatever, we'll say "Oh my God,"
Right.
and then they're like, well, you can't curse, but you also can't do that replacement term either. Then you're like, well, now what do I say?
I would have looked at him and said, oh my God. I noticed that you're an author. You have a book out. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, in the beginning of that sort of quarantine period of like March, April 2020, I kind of used the time to I was at home and I was like, I'm gonna go through my room. I'm gonna start cleaning stuff out, reorganize some stuff, and so I started going through my room, and I found two notebooks that of a bunch of short stories that I had written. I had it dated. It was 2010, so it was exactly 10 years old.
Wow.
And I had forgotten about this notebook. I had done back in college, back in 2010. I had done these like series of 30-day challenges with a buddy of mine, and one of them I challenged myself for 30 days to write a new short story every day. Well, I liked doing it so much. I'd never done something like that before that I ended up filling up I ended up extending past the 30 days and filling up 2 notebooks full of these like really short comedic stories. So anyway, 2020, I ended up finding these notebooks and I started reading them. I mean, it'd been 10 years, so I totally forgot about just about every story. And I found myself laughing at a lot of them. And other ones I was like, oh man, I could change this, I could make this a better punchline at the end, and I can rewrite this one. And then I started getting ideas for new ones. And so next thing I know, I started typing them out and, fixing them and writing new ones and stuff like that. And yeah, next thing I know, I have close to 50. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with these. It's fun. I'm just kind of bored because we're all at home right now, because of this COVID thing and no one knows what's going on, but I don't know what to do with these 50 short stories. Well, the exact same time, one of my best friends, he showed me this new equipment that he got. He's like a great illustrator, and he showed me that he's like, oh, I got this new thing where I can transfer it all digitally, basically like hand draw stuff and then, put it on Instagram or just put it anywhere digitally. And I got to thinking, I was like, you think maybe you could draw something for every one of these short stories and let's write a book?
Wow.
And he's like, well, that sounds cool, but do you know how to write a book? And I was like, no, but it sounds like we got nothing but time right now.
Yeah.
So I kind of made it my 2020 goal. And it was surprisingly easy. Just a lot of steps. It took a long time. There was a lot of steps to the process, but they weren't, you don't have to be a genius to figure it all out. You just have to be patient, I guess.
Okay.
And And that's what I did. And so my buddy and I ended up writing this book, and I was so determined to have it done in 2020 that it was literally like 10 minutes before midnight on December 31st, 2020, that I clicked the button to sent the email saying, yes, let's order, to have these books ordered and printed or whatever.
Wow. Very dramatic.
Yeah.
I like it.
So it came out in like February, March of 2021, which was it was right about the perfect time where I started, things in California started opening back up. And then by May, I was actually out in Florida and back in full swing in 2021, and got to sort of sell these books at shows and stuff like that. And was surprised at how well it was doing and how much people seem to like it. So
of course. And what's the hardest part of that? Like you said, you already had these things kind of written, you're doing more writing, which almost also seems to be a comedy exercise just for writing, right? When you're doing a 30-day challenge about comedic short stories, that sounds good to keep the brain going and stuff like that, even though, you know, you're very young at the time, but just to express yourself creatively. But when you see this stuff 10 years later and go, we got downtime, let's do a book. What's the hardest part? Because it's easy to say, hey, let's make a book. What's like the hardest part of the whole situation though?
Well, funny enough, it turned out to be a lot like stand-up. And I think one of the more challenging parts, because I already had a lot of it written, was the editing part and the putting it together. So like a stand-up set where you're just like, okay, that's great, that's a funny joke, or that's a funny short story, but where's it gonna go, and how do I order? And then you start, there's this giant puzzle of like, okay, well, this has to go first, but then this is too similar to that, and oh man, I got to cut this thing that I really like, but it just doesn't fit anywhere. And sort of that part of it, the part that I think most non-comics don't realize is such a big part of comedy, is the puzzle of everything, and making it a complete piece as opposed to just a series of jokes, or a series in this case of short stories.
Yeah, it's like a little surgery. You got to put things here, take things out, put that here. Exactly. What is the name of the book? I don't know if you already mentioned that.
Yeah, it's called A Day at the Zoo in 2062, which is a reference to it's a reference to one of the short stories that's in it that it just seemed fitting. I don't even think we went through very many titles. It was just like, I know this is the name of one of the stories, but this just seems like this has to be the title for this. Yeah.
That's awesome. I like that. And before, we start wrapping here, I noticed on your website, you doing some stuff with a Kevin Hart-Produced Series. Is that true?
Yeah. He
what is this all about?
His LOL network. He is basically this like influencer guy who hired me and two other comedians to write a show with him that Kevin Hart was producing. And we wrote this series that is on the LOL network. It's already out, actually. It's called Dead House. But yeah, wrote it. That was a very interesting experience for me, in the sense that I knew how to write sketches, and I knew I had written like pilots to things and stuff like that, but never anything super professional. And when they hired me on, I guess like a lot of people in a lot of jobs thought, like, I don't feel like I'm qualified for this, but let me fake it, let me pretend like I know what I'm doing, and was surprised at how much I actually knew. I think we constantly get surprised in comedy how many different skills we've learned over the years doing stand-up. We don't think of it as that. We think of it as like, I'm just going to goof off on stage, but you don't realize like how many different skills you're putting into place every time you go up on stage.
It's a lot of stuff. It's survival. It's being a professional. It's being a communicator, right? It's having to direct people you don't know in an audience watching you. There's so many things going, so many variables. You're exactly right. It seems easy. People go, "Oh, I could do that," and I go, "Do it then. Just go do it." But and dude, this is all from just your writing and just your career, but now you're just blossoming. So have you thought about this yet? Now, oh, by the way, did you get to meet Kevin?
Via FaceTime.
Okay.
Never in real life.
That's okay. I mean, he probably exists. It's okay.
Yeah.
And that's a great resume builder right there, boy. It's amazing. Have you thought who you might want to work with next? And maybe in what capacity? Would it be comedy? Would acting and maybe movies be up next for you? Have you thought about this?
Yeah, I don't know about who specifically, but I mean, there's tons of people out there I would love to work with, but I definitely want to take, I mean, obviously stand-up's my passion. I'm definitely going to keep just trying to get better and better at that as much as I can, but I would love to, get further in acting. I do a lot of like commercial stuff right now.
Right.
Been trying to break into like TV. I would love to do movies. But yeah, trying to push forward more with acting is next on the plate.
Yeah, and especially being in California, I know so much competition, but I mean, you grew up there. That's your area, and just but I know have you done national stuff, national commercials?
Yeah, they've all been. I've actually had a lot of success with commercials randomly. I don't know how. Honestly, I've done a lot. I've done 16 nationals, and they've which is a lot. But
wow.
I still have no idea why they keep picking me. I just go out there and do it. So it's a very specific art form, if you want to call it that. But yeah, I've had a lot of success with commercials.
You are so into SAG. It's beautiful right there. No, that's what I mean. Well, today I just auditioned via Zoom for like a local like plumbing company or something. So that's my big time. Yeah. Nice. In the Tampa Bay area. Go Pat. But that's awesome. And I saw you doing some stuff now on is it Twitch TV? You crazy kids with your technology. What's going on with Twitch and you?
Yeah, I actually start, when things shut down, especially out in LA in 2020, I just picked up doing live streams, and I had never done them before. I just almost immediately was like, well, tomorrow I start doing live streams. And it was basically that I would start out on Facebook Live. I would basically do stand up in front of this. I would try out new jokes. And just let people tell me in the chat, hit the like button, tell me what they like. Yeah. And I would try out a bunch of new stuff, and then I would do however long of a set I want to do. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes. I did up to 30 and 45 at some points. Whatever it was for the rest of the show, I would then play games. Take a BuzzFeed quiz or do like truth or dare type questions on air, just that kind of stuff. And I switched it over to Twitch eventually. I still do that on my off nights, but it became really important for me. And I know a lot of comics kind of gave me a lot of crap for it, of just like, man, what are you doing, like a virtual thing with no audience? And I'm like, yeah, I still have the chat there. And they're like, yeah, but that's not the same. And it's not the same, but it was so helpful for me in building jokes that I recorded an album earlier this year that comes out August 2nd. That was my second album, and I did it in 3 years, 2.5 years, something like that, between albums. And I was able to do it almost completely through COVID, completely through live stream shows. So a lot of people were just like, I'm not going to do comedy at all. I don't need those virtual shows. I did them. They weren't ideal, but I figured out a way and ended up writing a whole new 45 because of it.
So you see, you know how to do it. When everyone else is like poo-pooing it, you jump on it and you grow flowers, you grow roses out of it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I know we don't have much time, but I just want to say on that point that a lot of comics. It's funny, we brought up jazz earlier, and I also use jazz in another comparison with comedy, and that is in a sense of what not to do, because hey, I love, I still like listening to jazz. I still play jazz as like a hobby and all that. So I love jazz, but jazz was mainstream music for a long time, and then it died off. Now it's this like niche thing, and stand-up, there's always that fear that stand-up could end up the same way, that here it's this mainstream art form and it could die off. I know a lot of comics talk about that all the time, like, oh, is stand-up dying? Is it a dying art form? It's up to us, and we don't want it to become jazz. We don't want it to die off and become this very specific thing. And I think the reason that jazz did is because it got kind of elitist, and it was an everyman music thing. And then it got kind of, all the musicians were very like, oh, that's not jazz. Don't mess with this very pure music and pure art form. And
Right.
I think theater did the same thing, where everyone's just trying to emulate Shakespeare still. That it's, theater is a very specific way. And comics sometimes treat stand-up like that, and that stand-up has to be done a certain way, and we can't adapt in any way. But that failure to adapt is what would kill stand-up if it's going to die off. So you have to adapt. You have to be able to change it up and stop taking things so seriously with stand-up. We're just trying to make a crowd laugh and try to say what we want to say, and sometimes that might mean doing it in a new way, or just figuring out how to do that.
Different stuff.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I want a live crowd as well. If we have to do it sometimes virtually, that's what we got to do, right? I mean, so Daniel, I love it. It was a pleasure working with you here in Florida a few weeks ago. I hope I get to work with you again sometime in the near future and just see you around. And tell people how they can get a hold of and follow Daniel Eachus.
Yeah, so my website is danieleachus.com. That's EACHUS, like the word each, the word us. DanielEachus.com. I post tour days and all that kind of stuff. You can also follow me on all social media at Dan Eachus. I never go by Dan, but I, like an idiot, I was like, Dan's shorter, so that's what I should do on social media. I don't know. Anyways, Dan Eachus on all social media. I probably use Instagram the most, on Twitch, on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. So follow me on all of it.
All of that. And of course, the book again is called A Day in the Zoo in 2062.
Yep.
So very good. Daniel Eachus, again, I could talk to you all day long about comedy, man. Travel safe, enjoy your gigs, kick butt. See, I would normally say kick ass, but you're a clean comedian, so I say kick butt. And also, guys, thank you for, again, checking out Comedians Uncorked. Don't forget the website, comediansuncorked.com. Laugh, you deserve it. Thank you for enjoying free speech. And thanks again for checking out the Comedians Uncorked podcast.
You're putting up with the Comedians Uncorked podcast, live from the Sunshine State, Florida.
Don't forget to check out our Comedians Uncorked YouTube channel and just click on that subscribe button. Thanks.